Good morning. We're coming to you from the Ford Room in the Rector Community Museum. Our guest this morning is Mr. Steve Sigsby. I think most of you will be familiar with Steve. He grew up here and knows a lot of history about Rector. And so, good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Joey.
So, you grew up here. Your family's from here. Give me a little background on your family.
Well, originally, my father was a contractor. When he came back out of the war, my grandfather, L.B. Sigsby, was a masonry contractor. And Bert went into contracting, as in building houses. And throughout the late 40s, early 50s, he built 42 houses in Rector, scattered all around.
That's amazing.
He was a part owner of the Brewer Lumber Company, the lumber shed down by the railroad tracks. And he did that. His last big project, he built the original gymnasium that had the domed roof and the Rector Elementary School. And by that time, in the early 50s, the government was getting involved, and OSHA, and he decided he just didn't like all the rules and regulations. And up on Main Street, Mr. T.E. Henry had an insurance agency, and he was ready to retire. So my father made a deal and bought the Henry Insurance Agency. And it was a white glazed brick building there on Main Street, adjacent to the little city park. And half of the building was occupied by the Ray Davis jewelry shop. He had the front window with the display and everything. And then we had the south half of the building for the insurance agency. And Eileen Manchester was Mr. Henry's secretary. She was the wife of Laverne Mack Manchester. And so he switched over to the insurance business. And he kind of kept his hand in the building. Every once in a while, he would still build a new house or maybe renovate an old one. And so that's what he was doing as I was growing up in the 50s. And then, of course, later on, I graduated at Rector High School and then went on to Arkansas State University. Got a bachelor's degree in business management. And at that time, Vietnam was a hot topic, a raging war. And they had the first draft lottery, and I was number 18. So I went ahead and enrolled in advanced ROTC. And so when I graduated, I got commissioned as second lieutenant into the Army Signal Corps. And it was 91 in my graduating class, and 75 of them went to Vietnam, whether they wanted to or not. 10 went to Germany, and 6 of us stayed stateside. And I went to Colorado Springs, Colorado, just the luck of the draw, and spent 4 years out there, which was very enjoyable. We enjoyed the Rocky Mountain area. And then I spent my final year on the DMZ in South Korea. And in '76, I came back to Rector and to go in with my father, and we bought an insurance agency in Marmaduke and an insurance agency in Leachville, and just expanded the operation. And that's where I've been ever since. I also took the exam to be a real estate broker and got my real estate license in the late 70s. And that's what I'm continuing to do now after I have retired from the insurance agency business.
Here's the, when did you move to this building?
We moved over on West 4th Street in 1980. Clayton Harden owned all of these buildings, the Bank of Rector and Dr. Clopton's office and our old office. And so we bought what was Dr. Clopton's office and renovated it and moved the insurance agency over there. And I stayed there until 2016. And I sold the insurance agency to one of my longtime employees, Stephen Crancer, and moved my real estate business across the street next to Dr. Duncan's office and Mike Trail's office. And now it's kind of the Rector Racing and Rock and Roll Museum and a real estate office and just a big man cave.
Yeah, I enjoy going over there and looking at all the memorabilia, the rock and roll, especially. I like NASCAR too, but I especially like the rock and roll stuff. So
we've always enjoyed live music, and we go several times a year to Nashville, St. Louis, Memphis, Little Rock for live music. Particularly the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville is one of our favorite places. And we're going to the Orpheum in Memphis in a couple of weeks to see Bob Dylan. He's kind of getting up there. He's not going to be touring much longer, I don't figure. So we're going to take that opportunity while he's this close to go see him. But I've got all kinds of posters, photographs I've taken at concerts, backstage passes. I have tour programs going back to 1970 from when I was in college. And there's really not very many big name artists out there that I haven't seen over the last 50 years or so.
I started to ask you, do you know how many, a number of concerts?
No, I'd have to kind of really sit and study on that, but it's a lot. We saw Led Zeppelin on their very first North American tour at the old Mid-South Coliseum and was deaf for about 3 days. That was in the days before they had really engineered sound systems properly, and it was incredibly loud.
And can you imagine, because they didn't have the big PA system like they have now. So what you were hearing was coming out of each individual's amplifier.
Yes.
And just imagine, and they just had a wall of speakers behind
them.
I
know. And it's, a lot of the older rockers have long since had hearing issues from that. And then nowadays you go and everybody's got the little earbuds and wireless on their instruments and everything. It's considerable improvements.
Yeah. So let's talk about actually growing up in Rector, like being a teenager, going to the Ford Theater and the drawings and Labor Day and
as a smaller young kid before I could drive on Saturday and Sunday afternoons, my parents would drop me off at Ford Theater. There was always a Saturday matinee, sometimes a double feature, and then, of course, on Sundays. And that was just part of growing up in Rector. You went to the movie theater. And Tom King was the projectionist, and every once in a while he'd let some of us guys up there to watch him work the projectors and everything, which to us was a pretty neat little adventure. And that was certainly part of growing up. I remember one year they had the car on a trailer that Bonnie and Clyde were in that had 400 bullet holes in it. There was a promo of some kind of movie, and they had this car on the trailer, and it would go around from movie theater to movie theater to promote the movie. And as little kids, we were really fascinated with that. It was just full of bullet holes.
Well, I've interviewed several people, not just since I started doing this, but and I've never heard that story.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Have any idea about when that was? I guess
It would have
right
been in
after-
the late 50s,
Yeah.
59, 60, somewhere along in there. And I don't remember what the movie was because I was just fascinated by the car.
Maybe it's Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah.
Maybe there was a Bonnie and Clyde movie back
It
then.
must have been. And I grew up out on top of the hill next to the Rector Cemetery. And as a kid, a lot of my classmates wouldn't come and spend the night at my house because we were next door to the cemetery. It, was a creepy thing to them, and I never thought anything about it because that's where I grew up. And then as a teenager, I worked in the cemetery with Cecil Shillcutt and Monroe Holyfield. I was the guy with the little push mower mowing around all of the monuments. So after a while, I knew pretty much where everybody was buried. I could remember where their plot was. And then back then, we dug the graves by hand, not backhoes. And so I did that for several years as a teenager, worked in the cemetery. And it was, an interesting little project. And where we lived, we were up on top of a hill and had a long, curving concrete driveway. And it was a favorite speed track for kids on bicycles.
and on snow.
And then occasionally we'd have a little snow or ice, and then it was a speed track trying to get up and down the driveway. And we would sometimes have to park next door at my grandparents' house and just walk across the backyard because we couldn't get up the hill in the snow.
Yeah. Well, for people who don't know where that is, it's just right past the cemetery, and Don and Sue Mosley have lived there for a long time.
Yes.
And Glenna Bookout lives.
Glenna
with her
Bookout
grandparents.
lives in my grandparents' house. She was my babysitter back in the 50s since she was in college. So that when of course, Bert would be at work and my mother would be off somewhere, and they'd send me next door. And Glenna got me hooked on Dr. Peppers as a little kid, and I still drink them all day long now.
Now she's your dad's sister, correct? Glenna?
She was Bert's baby sister.
Yeah.
There were 4 girls and Bert, and he never had much of a chance to get a word in edgewise. And if you've ever met my Aunt Glenna, you know that she is a talker.
Yep.
And but she's the last of the Sigsbys. All 4 of the sisters have musical degrees. Janelle, the next to oldest, was actually got her doctorate, so was a professor of music at the Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia until she retired. And then Glenna taught music in Kennett and Hawcom and Luxora. And when she was at Kennett, one of her prime students was Sheryl Crow. She was the one that originally got her playing the piano and everything.
That's pretty cool.
That's a pretty neat thing, you
yes,
know.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
And then Glenna's son Keith played trumpet, and he was in a band with Sheryl Crow's dad over in Kennett.
Oh yeah, Wendell
And
Crow.
so that's kind of where my interest in music always came from, because all of my aunts were music teachers.
Well, that's cool. Yeah.
And I started in the 5th grade playing trumpet, and went all the way through high school, and then 4 more years at Arkansas State in the marching band and the concert band.
I didn't know that.
And then I took piano lessons all those years, like almost everybody else from Rector. We took piano lessons from Mabel Pope in Piggott.
That's right. Everybody did.
We had
but
our
me.
had our concerts or piano recitals every year, and
Well, this is skipping back some and then maybe forward some. You talked about Vietnam. The museum has been very, very dedicated to our veterans. And I had a guy tell me one day from Paragould that he said, Rector's the most patriotic town in this part of the country. But we do this every year, and we're part of an organization of the National Vietnam Veterans Association. The museum is, and on actually the National Vietnam Day is on March the 29th, but that's going to be Good Friday this year, and so I talked to the colonel at the junior ROTC, Colonel Norman, and he suggests that we move it back to Thursday. So Thursday at 10 o'clock we'll have an event also, and the junior ROTC from Paragould will be here. We'll have some, guest speakers, singers, have some songs, and obviously there's no charge. So 10 o'clock on Thursday, March 28th. So it's all, and this year we actually have some pins for families of veterans. We still have some Vietnam veteran pins left. We have the pin you see here. We have some of those pins to give this year too. So just remember Thursday, March 28th at 10 a.m.
Well, Labor Day, when the museum is open, a lot of, like, my old classmates, and then the out-of-town people that just coming to see the museum, and they're expecting the museum part of it, I think, but they're always very impressed with our military portion.
Yep.
That we've honored all the veterans as best as possible, and that part, a lot of towns have a little museum, history of the city, but not also inclusive with the military and the history of all of the residents that have served our country.
That's true, and we we always do a big Veterans Day here too in November. So I wanted to throw that in before I forgot it. Let's look at some pictures here. I showed some of these to Sherlin when we interviewed yesterday, but it kind of brings back some memories. Here's one that's kind of before our day,
Right.
And but this was not before our day.
Swear hitters.
Yeah.
All of us kids always liked to kind of wander around down there and look at all the old cars. He was truly our character. He and my grandfather were good friends.
He was real good friends with my grandfather too.
Yeah. And I can remember going down there with my grandfather, Sigsby, just to visit, and old Square would let me kind of wander around a little bit, look around. He the story was he made all of his money during World War II selling the scrap iron, and just shut it down after that. And
yeah, he didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything. He owned quite a bit of farmland. People didn't realize that, and
that's why he and my grandfather were friends. They had a cattle farmers that met. Just a fence between them. Yeah.
And he had a lot of row crop land over on the western side of the county that he bought in the olden days with his money from the scrap iron. And
well, his I think wasn't Charles Wright his dad?
Yes.
Okay, he owns several additions that he bought, from the railroad.
Yes.
There's several people bought what they called additions. We talk about the Stafford edition and Sigsby edition and all this, but back then there were several, right?
Yes, yeah,
Editions.
yeah. He had 2 or 3, I think, different editions over the years.
Yeah, yeah, and we have a map from the 50s, and it lists those names
Hmm.
on each edition, and but yeah. So here's another picture too that
The old,
bring back some memories.
yep, that's where I got my first haircut.
Yeah,
Ralph Pruitt
many people got their first
and
haircut
Mr.
right here.
Cooper and Mr. McCready
Hmm.
were the barbers there, and Ralph was the youngest one of the bunch, so all of us younger kids kind of tended to go for him.
Yeah, and here's the creamery, Elsaw's Creamery.
Yep, I can remember. It was always fun to go through the creamery, and when I was in elementary school, they used to have field trips, and they would take us on the bus and take us out to the dairy barn and watch them milk the cows, and then bring us up to the creamery building and showed us how they processed the milk.
Well, I was closer to it than that. I did the milking.
No.
And my grandparents had some dairy cows, and we'd fill these big cream buckets.
Mhm.
They had a separator that was it was real tall. I say real tall. It was like probably 5 feet tall, and the side of it was a piece of glass. And so when you poured the milk in there, you could see it separate. And you could see the cream from the milk. And so then they would just set the buckets under there and let it, you could see as it went down, you could see, and then you would, and they, till it got down to the, I guess the cream was on top. I can't remember now, but, and then you would change buckets. And then once a week we would come to town and take those big
Yeah.
old heavy buckets of milk into the creamery and sell it to them.
Yeah.
And they made butter, whatever out of it. Yeah.
And they had a very distinctive milk bottle.
Yes. That's
And
very collectible now.
yes, I have several of those, and my brother Kevin also has
Yeah.
several.
Yeah.
My grandfather Tucker from Mississippi, when he would come up to visit, and he'd look at that bottle and he goes, "El's ass, what kind of milk is that?" And my mother would fuss at him and say, "No, it's Elsa." "Well, it looks like El's ass to me." And that was just always kind of a running family joke.
Yeah. Well, when I was at school, we got the little bottles and it had the cap
Yep,
on the top. But we would
Pop the
bend
cap out.
Well, we would bend it to where it would just say ASS, and and when you're in the 3rd, 4th grade, that's a huge
oh,
deal.
that was a big
Yeah,
deal.
yeah. Let's see, we got. There's the old elementary school, which was south down on Greenville,
Yes.
facing Greenville, facing the west, which will be the next block over, which brings back another memory for me, is who had the little restaurant or house there on the corner? Hamburgers. We go and get our hamburgers
for a quarter, and cheeseburgers were 35 cents.
Yeah, and let's see. I don't know if I actually showed that, but that's yeah. And then what was her name? Isn't that crazy?
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. All of a sudden, I've gone blank on that one.
I tell people when you get in your 70s, you have an excuse.
Eula's.
Eula's Cafe. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And you remember sometimes we would have an open, what they call it, open campus. And then somebody do something stupid, and they decide to close the campus. Well, and you still, of course, that was hard on you because everybody at school went over there, and then see, Kate's had the one down on the
down
corner.
on Pine Street.
And then I don't know if Chadwick's built that building. It doesn't seem like it.
No, Foster had the other store.
Right across from Case.
Mm-hmm.
Foster, okay. Then Chadwick's.
Yes.
Got it. And that was a place to hang out because he was a big music guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, had jukebox and would, you know, play the music and he had a bigger assortment of like potato chips and stuff like that.
And
you know.
I can remember where the old elementary school was. When they first tore it down, they left that lower retaining wall of the basement. And we used to get out and walk all around that foundation and everything before they finally cleaned it off.
Wow.
It was a magnet for kids. And then, of course, the high school where you and I went.
Yeah. A lot of memories of that fire escape right
Yeah.
there. and the watering trough over here.
Mm-hmm. And the coal-fired boiler. And Mr. Chadwick was the maintenance guy, and he'd be down there early in the morning shoveling coal to get the place warmed up.
Yeah. Well.
And then eventually each classroom had its own individual heater, just a freestanding heater. And I can remember Mrs. McCready, the math teacher, was very cold-natured. And each room had a thermostat, and at every recess she'd go out and take this rag and wet it in the water fountain to put over that thermostat to keep it pumping just as hard as it could. And we'd be sitting in there just sweating.
Oh,
you know.
I remember, yeah. I remember. Yeah. So you probably noticed that I kept changing pictures back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I've got this bigger system, where we can do this with the pictures, I more appreciate when KIT is showing the wrong video.
Yeah.
Because it sure is easy to get confused here on what we're doing. And you know, and while we're here, I want to mention this is that if you saw the last two videos, Miss Kay Huggins and Sherlin, I was kind of begging for money because I've ordered some new equipment, and one of those things that is included in that is the software to be able to do this with instead of just having a video of us sitting here talking. And so if you're enjoying these videos as much as people are saying they are, you can send me a check at Post Office Box 313, Rector, Arkansas 72461, and help us pay for this. And or we do take Cash App, and that Cash App is $ Rector Museum. So anyway, that's a little begging going on. So, but we enjoy doing this, and I wanted to have. Well, it took me 4 tries to get Miss K's done, and so I decided then that we had to do something. So, anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about here? I'm looking at pictures of the old sail barn.
The old sail barn.
Yeah.
And Mosley's have that now, and David has about a half a dozen classic automobiles stored in there.
Yeah. This is we were talking about that, but the guy with the hammer is my grandfather, my great grandfather on my mother's side, I believe, and he had the business. I think where the Methodist Church parking lot is, he had the blacksmith shop, and then this is my grandfather on my dad's side, my great grandfather on my dad's side, and the little girl standing there looking through the window is actually my grandmother. But anyway, I thought it was pretty cool that my great grandfathers on both sides had businesses here.
Yeah.
So my family goes all the way back to when, like yours, when they came here and started selling off the lots and people started coming in, And so I've kind of traced it back, and what was it, 1897, I believe, is when we were established. Isn't that right? 1897
Mm-hmm.
or 87, 97, I think. And you know, our families were here then, so it's pretty amazing to think back
Yeah.
that far and how they got here and you know where they came from.
Yes.
You know, and all that. So
And how originally it was out at Scatterville, and it moved to its present location when the railroad came through.
yeah, how the railroad. It's kind of like Walmart controls towns now.
Yeah.
It used to be the railroad coming through, and it turned this town into a logging town, and then after logging kind of went out, then the cotton came in.
Right.
And
You know, I can remember when we had 2 gins in town.
in town, that's right.
We had one down on Pine Street that belonged to Chick Hill, and then the one over just across the tracks, QP Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy Parsons had that gin, and that's where the ice house was, next to that, for the globs.
Yeah.
And come harvest time, the whole town kind of stayed in a perpetual dust fog from the ginning process.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, and right there by the ice plant there, and there beside the caffeinated cow, there used to be a crossing there, and I watched that train hit that
Moving van. I remember that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That stuff floated for about an hour after they got hit.
It was amazing. It just went straight up. Everything,
It just
refrigerator, everything went
exploded.
straight up. Yeah.
Glenn Stewart,
Mm-hmm.
his Allied moving van, and he just miscalculated a little bit. His load was heavier, and it got hung. And then the story I always remember as a kid was that they tried to stop the train, and he wouldn't stop because he was running behind schedule that day.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
That's the part I heard until he hit the van, and then he was really behind schedule.
Well,
And then, of course, they eventually closed that one because it was an unsafe crossing.
yeah, because those buildings you couldn't see.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there was another one up further north, and you didn't come to the crossing straight up. It was kind of an X. You had to turn no matter which direction. And we had several car train collisions there, and finally, I guess it was back in the 80s before they finally shut that one down.
I remember that David Flick and I were going over to his shop, and he was just really, it was from his house to his shop on the other side, and man, he was barreling, and we just went right over there, and he said, oh, you can hear a train if it's coming. Well, about 3 or 4 days later, he came to me, he said, no, you can't. He almost got hit there. And so,
well, I remember one of the last wrecks was a guy that had a business with cotton candy, and he had a little van truck. He was, if I remember right, he was from Leachville, and he just he would go around to stores leaving cotton candy. And train hit that and had cotton candy everywhere.
Everywhere. Well, yeah. Well, I was thinking, wasn't one of the guys who was killed there lived right there by just a little past that? If you went on around instead of turning and going over, lived right. Locke was his name.
Willard Locke.
Wasn't he killed there?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, that's you know that was.
It was just one of those things. It was right there to his house. And
he
just took it for granted, I guess.
Yeah. So, well, I think we've been on here long enough. I don't know how
would
long.
like
I
to
forgot to look.
Throw in a plug for the Rector Fire Department.
Oh yeah, you bet.
When I first came back, we had a couple of old fire trucks, and the fire department was down attached with the city hall in the old hotel building, and they didn't have any uniforms. They finally got a hat, a helmet, and a jacket. And when I first went on the fire department, that was all we still had. And now we have each uniform is about $4,000 worth of protective clothing.
Wow.
We have air packs. We have 3 engines. We have a brush truck, a rescue truck with all of the extrication equipment, and then a service truck, and constantly looking to continue to improve. We are the best rated fire department in Clay County. We're a class 4.
And it helps with our insurance.
It helps
rates.
with our insurance. When I first came back, we were a class 8.
Wow.
And we're a 4, Pigot's a 5, and Corning's a 6. And so we have continued to try to improve things. And of course, we built the new station down on the highway, and then we've enlarged it, doubled it in recent years. And so we've got a good crew. We've got 20, and there's 4 of us old guys, and then we have several young guys.
Well, and let me say this: these guys, they only do the fires if the ambulance can't get here.
That's right.
They're called out. Or if somebody falls and they can't get them up, they're called out to do that. And I mean, they don't get paid for all that. That's strictly volunteer.
That's correct.
Now the fires, you get
$10.
$10. I don't care if they fight it for 3 days.
Yeah.
It's $10, and so it just pays their gas to get to the fire. So
yeah, last week we were out 3 hours on a field fire and woods fire, and Marmaduke and Greenway came in and helped us. We have a mutual assist agreement with Marmaduke and Greenway. If we get paged out, they get paged out as backup until we get on the radio and say, we're okay, we don't need you. And the same thing when Marmaduke or Greenway gets paged out, we're back up to them. And we communicate with the radio, and what have you got? We need to roll, and they say yes or no.
Yeah, that's awesome. Unless you're close to it, like my son-in-laws are involved, and so unless you're close to it, you have no idea what it takes to be a volunteer for the fire department. You don't go get cats. That's not true.
Yeah, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you got to roll if something happens.
That's right.
So, Thursday night when we had the huge field fire, and then Friday night we had the catastrophic accident out at Holly Island with the fatality, and we were out there about 3 hours because the tractor-trailer truck had turned over and was completely blocking the highway, and we had to stay on scene. We had to recover the body, and then we had to assist Rudy's towing, getting the highway cleared out. Yeah. And that took a couple of hours.
Wow, yeah.
And
that's not considered a fire?
No.
That,
we were just there.
Yeah, that's what I thought. They don't
Thursday
get their $10
we got our $10, but
yeah. There's got to be some blaze before they get $10. But that I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a huge part of a small town as a volunteer fire department, and to know that in a town this size that we have 10 guys or 20 guys who will volunteer their time. And now, am I right? Now it comes in on your phone. So you could be in Texas and still get
anywhere.
the call.
Plenty of times I've been in Nashville or somewhere, and the phone goes off.
And if you're in Paragould, most of the time you head back.
That's right. If they tell me it's a fire, I'm heading back to town.
Yeah, and people don't realize that, but they may be with their family somewhere, and their phone goes off, and they hit back.
That's one of the big improvements. When we started out, we had pagers, and they'd wake you up in the dead of night when they went off, and they'd just tell you where you're going, and that was it. And it was a significant improvement when we went to the fire horn system, where it all comes through on your phone.
Yeah,
because and like if I'm off somewhere, I could stay online on my phone and hear all the radio traffic.
Yeah,
and,
well, I never
and
thought
what's
about
going
that.
on.
So, when we moved here in 1966, we moved into. His name went away, but he was a police officer at the house where Dina lives. Who lived there? He was a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and so he was part of the fire department, and that phone, even though didn't live there anymore, like they never got this changed. When there was a fire,
Yeah, the
it
old
was
fire phone system.
one constant ring.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't ring like a regular phone. It just started ringing, constant ring until you picked it up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the fire phone system, and then they eventually went to the pagers, and now we've gone
Yeah.
to the fire horn system on the cell phones.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Anything else you can think of?
No, it's been an interesting. I've been back since the late '70s, and all of the significant improvements the city has made in all these years.
Yeah.
We've been fortunate. We've had some really good mayors and city councils that have worked to maintain the city. It's a struggle for the small towns to maintain retail businesses
Oh my goodness.
in this day and age. And when I was a kid, we had 2 department stores, 2 drugstores, 2 banks. And
At one time, 2 movie theaters.
I
on
don't
Front
ever remember the other one, but I knew it was there.
Yeah, it was on Front Street,
Mhm.
and I remember going through, looking through the doors
Yeah.
to see inside, but I don't remember a movie. But I have talked to people who did, and so it is very hard to keep a town like Rector alive.
Yes.
And we're if you look at population sign, for instance, we got a picture of the wreck that was like 1931, and you can see the population sign, and it said approximately 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
But we're approximately 2,000 now.
That's right.
1866 or something.
Yeah.
But to just to think about all the towns we've seen who have just gone away, lost their schools, and we've had some really good leaders in this town over the years to just keep it alive.
Yes.
I just can't imagine, you've completely lost your tax base. When Corning lost their Walmart, it affected us tax base wise because we get some of the county tax money. And so one of these days I'm going to do this education on small towns buying online because a couple of years ago they passed the sales tax law that wherever that item is delivered to, that zip code gets the tax money.
Yes.
Now, if you have a business in town, you need to shop at that business. But if not, if you buy online, we get the sales tax. And I don't care if it comes from China, we get the sales tax. And so one of these days I'm going to do a little education on that. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I think we've been on here long enough. We'll do this again sometime.
Okay. Yeah, enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Thanks for coming. Today's guest was Steve Sigsby, lifelong citizen of Rector. He's been active in many things. His wife, Lark, is on the city council and has been for how many years?
8 years.
8 years. And so we appreciate people like that, just trying to keep Rector alive. Thank you very much. I'm not sure who I'm interviewing next, but I'm sure it'll be interesting. So keep watching. Thanks.
Yeah, I was in Corning this morning, and